I first just want to note the timing of this film is so relevant. I think I watched my screener right after the news of the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, and stories were showing up in LGBTQ publications about LGBTQ people working to get out of Afghanistan. I have to ask first, did you ever imagine when you started working on this that you would have a film that is so timely and relevant for this exact moment?
No, no, not at all. No, I started this project in 2013, and see it so sadly relevant right now is it's just heartbreaking. It's I wish it wasn't as relevant, but yeah.
But I feel like it provides, watching it gave a lot of historical context and background to even understanding what's in news today, which sometimes doesn't capture that like 20, 30 years of history. So I feel like you and Amin were able to give us a window into why all of this was happening as well.
Yeah, but definitely, and I'm happy that it gives some perspective to what's going on right now. And it was weird and wild to have worked on a film for so long, and to have worked. There's this sequence where Amin and his family flee Kabul, and to all of a sudden see almost identical shots on the news. But I'm happy that it can give some perspective to people now.
Mm-hmm. I know probably one of the biggest things is the fact that your use of animation ends up being very incredibly powerful. I can imagine that's helpful for protecting anonymity, but it also is a way of doing storytelling that is really innovative and groundbreaking. What drove that decision to choose animation as the form for storytelling, especially for a documentary?
Well, one thing was anonymity, because this is the first time Amin shares his story, and it's really his life trauma that he puts out there, and he really wanted to keep control about when he wants to talk about it. So not meeting people in the street who would know his innermost secrets and who would want to talk about what happened on that boat, and so that was the key thing. But also, because it's a story that mostly takes place in the past, so really, like, how do you bring back the past alive? How do you bring Afghanistan in the 80s back to life? How do you bring his childhood home back to life? How do you put him in there? How do you make a gay bar in Stockholm in the 80s or in the 90s come back alive? All these things. And it's also, it's really a story about memory and trauma, and the animation really enables us to be a lot more expressive about things. When he does things he has a hard time talking about because it's traumatic events, then you go into this more expressive and surreal kind of animation that would be more honest towards the emotion he had inside, not trying to be realistic about what actually happened, but just kind of be honest to his emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. You think of animation being something that's actually more true and more honest, because we think of film, live stuff being the thing that is the most real. But I think you're right. There's a lot of stuff that can't be put into words very easily, and being able to put images with it helps people to kind of process what someone is feeling and thinking and hearing and experiencing.
Yeah, no, but definitely, and it really came from his voice, his way of talking. And at a point you could hear that, okay, but here he has no words left. This is now it's emotion, and he would kind of slow down and he would have trouble finding the words. And I was like, okay, but we need to see this in the visual style as well. And that's kind of why we invented this more graphical kind of animation.
And putting yourself in the story too, that it's not just a recounting of his history, but it is a story about him telling his story. And so you also become a character in this animation as well. I think, is it important for you to kind of say what it was like for you, to have it depicted, what it's like for you to be drawing this story out of someone?
Yeah, but I think it was, to me, this, I didn't think I want to do a refugee story and then went out and found a refugee to do a story about. This was the core of the story is that I wanted to do a story about my friend. Mm-hmm. I've known him for more than 20 years. And I was curious about his past since I met him. He didn't want to talk about it, but the curiosity was always there. So the fact that he all of a sudden felt the need to share it, and the process of making this film became kind of symbiotic, that he wanted to share his story, and I really wanted to know it, to hear it. And that's kind of where the story derived from. Of course, it's also about being a refugee, and it became even more clear in the process of making the film, because we had a big refugee crisis here in Europe. And all of a sudden, it also became a story about how do you give a human face to to refugees. You know, often refugees are just described on their needs, on what they need, and not as the complex psychological creatures we all are. And just to kind of show that being a refugee is not an identity, and because it's told through the friendship, I'm able to give a lot more nuance to the story, you know, and so it was clear from the very beginning to me that I needed to be in there, because it's a story about a secret, and in order to be a story about a secret, you need to have the one in there who doesn't know the secret, and also because to me it's really just a story about a friendship.
And I was just going to ask that too. I think the friendship is such a big part of this film, and I don't know if someone else could have gotten a confession in that same way that you did. And I know this is something that came out of your existing friendship, which is so much different than what a lot of other directors would have if they're, you know, interviewing someone that's close to a stranger. How did your relationship with Amin grow and develop and evolve over the years to the point that he got to trust you with the person to tell this story for him?
I think we've been very close for many years, and like, you know, we traveled together, we celebrated New Year's together almost every year for a long period of time. We spent a lot of time together, so I think he kind of trusted me to a certain extent, but he didn't trust anyone. So when he finally came to the conclusion that he needed to share his story with someone, it just made sense for him to share it with me, because I was one of those the people he trusted. You know, he came out to me when we were 16 years old on the train you see in the film, and it was because he trusted me. We're two friends of his that he trusted, and he thought, okay, before I maybe come out to my family, I'm gonna test it out on these guys and see how it goes. So I think he's since then, because our reaction was kind of like, sure, you're gay, and so what? Let's move on. Then he kind of said, okay, but I can trust these guys.
I feel like also Denmark for a long time has been on the forefront of like LGBTQ acceptance, more so than many other countries, including Afghanistan, including Russia, places where it's been as well. And realizing that he's, you know, that we're talking about a very personal story, but also the fact that he's now in perhaps what is the most accepting environment. And the bigger secret, the bigger reveal for him is the story about him getting to Denmark more than him coming out. I'm so used to coming out being the big reveal that shows up in LGBTQ related films, but this seemed like it was such a given. Yeah,
but you know, the stories are kind of intertwined, you know, because when he was a kid in Afghanistan, when he was young, he couldn't be openly gay, and then when he arrives to Denmark, he can't be honest towards his past, you know. So there's always been a part of himself that he couldn't really bring with him, and you know, the story is called Flee, and it's of course about, you know, fleeing Afghanistan, coming to Denmark, but it's really about, you know, having to flee a part of yourself, not being able to be honest to who you are fundamentally. And here, like, you know, him being gay and not being able to be honest about it towards his family is kind of the same story as him being in Denmark and not being able to be honest towards his past.
I also feel like, well, you know, it was that kind of given for such a long time in the film until the point where he does come out to his family. And as an LGBTQ person who does a lot with media, I've seen a lot of stories. This is where I sort of stop and wait for, like, now the horrible thing is going to happen that I've waited for so long. And the response from the family, you know, and especially the brother who sort of takes him to the first environment where he can be himself too. I think that it was a moment of tension, waiting for a moment for that to break at some point. And I would love to know how it felt for you to hear a story like that for the first time, and what sort of impact that's had on you.
I was really pleasantly surprised by how it all ended up. And I think what actually surprised me was his own prejudice against his own family, that he thought that they wouldn't accept him. Maybe it's because I'm from Denmark, and as you say, it's quite open here. But when I heard that story, that they took him to that gay bar, I was just like, wow, like, it's, yeah. I think even the Danish family I'm not sure that would happen.
It was a moment of sigh of relief, and I know that there are, you know, U.S. Young people that are scared to come out to their families. There are young people that are scared to come out to their families all over, and that portion seems so relatable. And perhaps because he'd already endured so much trauma, we get, you know, you just kind of expect that trauma is going to keep happening. And I think he had the reaction that so many of us wish that we would have from our families as well, which is what gives so much hope, especially at the film at the end of such trauma.
Yeah, but definitely. And I was, you know, working on that sequence. I really wanted to show, you know, the relief that Amin felt, you know, and trying, because he'd been building up to this moment for, you know, 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
So to just get a tad of that into the film and just give the audience that sigh of relief that he felt when he came out and finally realized, okay, but they accept me and I can be who I am. So to just give the audience a little bit of that in the film was really what we worked on, to try to see if we can kind of, you know, stretch the tension and kind of give the relief only when he kind of entered the gate bar at the very end.
I have to ask, does that gay bar still exist?
It does, yeah.
So there will be pilgrims after they've seen this film. Now they're going to want to go have the experience that Amin had at 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure it looks the same, but yeah.
I love that. I think one of the things why I think this is important and powerful is that it's very personal. Flee is very personal and it's very educational at the same time. And I know for us at GLAAD, we believe that representation is essential to building understanding and accelerating acceptance for the LGBTQ stories. So stories like that of Amin's provide historical context. It makes issues much more real and much more personal, which often affects people, you know, in their gut instead of in their head. I'm curious how you find that tension of Flee being an educational tool, but also something that really hits people emotionally at the same time.
But I think that's kind of what you're hoping for, you know. When you make a film, you hope that people get, you know, emotionally impacted by it, and at the same time kind of rethink, maybe not their life, but maybe some views that they kind of rethink about how to approach certain people or certain parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in such a place where there's a lot of suspicion of anyone that's different, anyone that people that are immigrants or refugees are faced with suspicion. LGBTQ people are faced with suspicion. And I feel like this film has the ability to speak different things to different audiences that are able to see it, and how you're thinking of each of those different Muslim audience, an LGBTQ audience, perhaps someone that doesn't know or understand LGBTQ people or Muslims very well, if it can speak to those folks differently.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I really hope that you can tell our distributor that, but I really hope that the film will get illegally downloaded in Pakistan and Afghanistan and those places, and people will watch it and kind of have a realization about, okay, but you know, maybe being gay is okay, and in the same way that people here in Denmark and other parts in the West need to understand that you know, refugees aren't one thing, then hopefully also people in places where it's not acceptable to be gay can kind of see this film and say, okay, maybe it's okay.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, you're doing a wonderful job of bringing together and doing that bridge building that I think we talk about so much, but is really hard to do in practice. So, I mean, for that, I really want to thank you and appreciate the work that you're doing on behalf of GLAAD, and know that this film is going to be a great, I keep calling it a tool, which is probably not the right word, but something that is going to reach people, to teach them and to have them understand things emotionally, which I think does impact actions and how people behave. So thank you so much.
No, but I'm happy if the film is a tool. You can use that word. It's great.